Let's bring in Peter Brookes, former CIA officer and a senior fellow of National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. Peter, good to see you.
Good morning.
32 green-on-blue attacks this year alone, 40 NATO soldiers killed, including 24 Americans. Who's behind this? Is it the Taliban that's recruiting these guys?
Well, there's a number of factors, it appears to me. Of course, there are infiltrations. There are people that are recruited by the Taliban who certainly wants us to fail in Afghanistan and to hasten our departure. And then, of course, there are potentially other personal issues that come up between a trainer and a student. But this is very bad, Greg. The problem here is it's not only bad for us, these tragic deaths of our brave Americans and coalition forces, but also for Afghanistan, because this is going to affect the training. I mean, no matter how hard you try and how professional our soldiers are, this is going to affect their training because of the level of trust. And Afghanistan's going to have to take this mission over someday. So it's really bad all the way around.
But U.S. forces already use an 8-step vetting process for all Afghan recruits. So what do we do? Do we step it up even further to a 20-point vetting process, better counter intel to uncover in advance these turncoats?
I think you have to. I mean, I don't know what exactly the 8 steps are. Maybe it needs to be 10 or 25 or whatever, but we're going to need to do that. The military is taking steps. They may have to make the group smaller. They may have to have an American or coalition soldier watch each one of the Afghan students. Counterintelligence is important. What are these guys doing when they're off duty? Especially policemen. Are people watching them to see if they're having contact with Taliban that might recruit them? So there's steps that have to be taken. But you got to remember the other thing is that we have Americans out on patrol, on missions with Afghans. And, you know, one of the most important things between soldiers and when they're in the field is trust. You know, trust between them that the buddy's got my back or my other forces have got my back here. And that's going to be damaged as well from what is happening in the training environments at bases or at other training facilities.
Peter, as we continue to draw down troops through October, I mean, thousands of them, does that mean that the Americans who remain become even more vulnerable to these kinds of green-on-blue attacks?
That's potential unless you can get your arms around this problem about some of the things we're talking about, better vetting, watching the Afghan students, counterintelligence. The other thing I'm worried about, Greg, is what will happen to our coalition partners. Will they decide that the cost is too high and start pulling out their troops even faster? So once again, it's a very, very bad situation, something we have to deal with because it's not only bad for us and for our coalition partners in the future, it's also bad for Afghanistan.
How is it possible that we can locate and kill Osama bin Laden but not the head of the Taliban, Mullah Omar?
Well, Mullah Omar, I think, is in Pakistan. That's a real challenge for us in a sense. Hopefully, we're going to get the Pakistanis to step up. Right, exactly. But you're right. You know, there's very interesting alliances going on there, and that's a whole other challenge besides what we have going on in Afghanistan, but definitely related.
That's got to be job one. Peter Brookes, good to see you as always.
Thank you, Greg.